Lesson 21. Last week, pranayama was introduced, Nadi Sodhana pranayama. We forgot to read Sutra 10 upon conclusion. Sutra 10 gives us some important information that is hidden within the text. Maybe you remember that we started in the first session last week with Shiva in and then Shiva out. And then in the second session I told you to forget about that and focus on the two cycles that were then introduced. So throughout the years people have sometimes asked, the text doesn't mention that you should ignore that first cycle and focus on the second and the third. But that is embedded in Sutra 10 and we forgot to read that last week. So let's have a look at that before we go to Sutra 11, the start of today's reading material. Sutra 10, if the energy is drawn in by the Ida, it is ordained that it should be released by the other, Pingala. If drawn in through the Pingala, then having retained it, it should be released through the left, Ida. Those who have perfected themselves in yama by continually practicing energy control according to these instructions through the right and left channels have their nadis purified in not less than 3 months. So, Sutra 10 wraps up the introduction of Nadi Sodhana pranayama, and it clearly states that there are 2 cycles, and it also says that if you let Shakti in, you then should let Shiva out, which we did last week, and if you take Shiva in, you should then let Shakti out. So that is basically the conclusion, saying that it is 2 cycles and it starts with inflow of he makes it a little bit confusing again by using not only just Ida and Pingala but also the left and the right. He's trying to spray salt or sand in your eyes. If you do not have proper guidance, it is difficult to extract practical information from these texts. But it is a confirmation that that first cycle that we did last week in the first session is not something that we repeat as part of Nadi Sodhana pranayama, but the second and the third cycle that were then introduced in the later session, the second session of last week, those two together form Nadi Sodhana pranayama. All right, Sutra 11. One should practice well kumbhakas 4 times a day, in the early morning, midday, evening, and midnight, gradually, till they number 80 each time. Several important issues here. First, highlight the word gradually. This is a word that we will come across several times, and I think there is a sutra where the word gradually is repeated 3 times in just one sentence. Why is gradually important? We're talking about energy. We are energy. When we rush things, energy blocks. And that does not only apply to your yoga practice, it applies to everything you try to achieve in life. So we need to, if we do not already have the quality, we need to adopt patience in our lives. With patience, we can achieve anything without stress, without blocking of energy, without getting sick. So gradually. One should practice well. Kumbhaka equals pranayama exercise. Kumbhaka is the most important stage of each cycle. It's the stage of the retention after inflow and also after outflow. But when the author talks about Kumbhaka in this kind of context, he's not referring only to the retention stage, but the whole exercise of pranayama. And he tells us that we should practice the Kumbhakas 4 times a day. In the early morning, midday, evening and midnight. Does this mean that you have to do pranayama every day, 4 times a day? No. What is the practical reason for advising to do pranayama at different times of the day is we are dealing with energy. And energy is constantly fluctuating. At night, Shiva energy is dominating. That is why we start to yawn in the evening. That is why the birds go into their nest to sleep for the night, like we also do. That's why the flowers in nature, when they are blooming, they close during the night. And that is directed by Shiva domination. In the daytime, Shakti is dominating. It is what causes us to open our eyes in the morning. And like it or not, even if you wanted to stay in bed, you just can't sleep anymore. Shakti is causing that. Shakti is responsible for us becoming active, for the flowers to open up, for the birds to fly out of their nest looking for food. The whole of nature basically wakes up. Then not only is Shiva dominating throughout the night and Shakti dominating throughout the day, but they wax and wane. So Shakti starts to increase in the morning and it reaches a certain peak and then it reduces again the latter part of the day. And the same with Shiva. It starts to increase slowly in the late afternoon. It reaches a certain peak somewhere in the night. And then early in the morning, towards early in the morning, it slowly decreases. Now, why should we then practice pranayama 4 times a day? It doesn't mean we should do it every day 4 times a day, but to familiarize ourselves not only with the exercise, but also with our own condition, based on energy, doing pranayama on different times of the day will have different results, will give us a different experience. When you do Nadi Sodhana pranayama in the morning, it affects your condition. When you do Nadi Sodhana pranayama in the evening, it again will affect your condition, but it will feel different from the way that it affected you in the morning. And this experience helps you to evaluate, to assess your condition, your fluctuating condition throughout the day and the night, so that you become aware of that. And it also helps you to understand what each specific pranayama does with you at a different time of the day. Why is this important? Pranayama is helping us when necessary to correct our condition. To be able to do that, we need to be able to assess our condition, but we also need to be able to determine which pranayama to use in which condition. And that's only possible through experience. And maybe you remember last week when I tried to explain that it is impossible to do these exercises as breath control, I explained that the basic count, which we have started, based on a ratio of 1, 4, 2, 4, the basic ratio of counting is 12, 48, 24, 48, but the maximum count, the ultimate count, is 80, 320, 160, 320. The number 80 is mentioned here. It is a little bit a vague statement that only makes sense if it is explained properly, what it means. Have yourself a cushion? Yeah. All right, Sutra 12. In the first stage, there is perspiration. In the second, tremor is felt. And in the highest stage, the energy goes to the chief place, Brahmarandra, which is the crown chakra. So one should control the energy. Last week also, I explained that if you know what you're looking at, you see that there is a pattern in every level of yoga. And it always starts with increasing Shakti. Then you add Shiva to end up in Sattva. That is what is described here. And we came across this perspiration and tremor before, which I explained is symbolism. In the first stage there's perspiration, that is Shakti domination, heat. Perspiration is not literally perspiration, sweating, but heat, a Shakti domination or a Rajas condition. Every stage, when you do asana, when you do pranayama, when you do mudras, also in the highest stage of meditation called samadhi, which I will explain towards the end of the course, you see the same pattern. First you increase Shakti, then you add Shiva, and then you end up balancing out in the middle. And that is where all the magic starts. And why do we do this? To end up in the highest stage, where the energy goes to the chief place, Brahmarandra, or the crown chakra, which only functions when there is sattva. In the first stage of Nadi Sodhana Pranayama, you increase Shakti while reducing Shiva. So you have a bump. Then you add Shiva and you let out Shakti. So you come down from your high and hopefully you end up somewhere in the middle. If it is correct, if you've done the exercise a couple of times and it starts to go smooth, you notice that it will boost your concentration. You're more focused. The concentration on nada naturally becomes more intense as a result of that sattva that you create. 13. Rub on the body the perspiration resulting from fatigue. By this, the body derives firmness and lightness. Again, this is not about perspiration. Resulting from fatigue is what is important. This sutra is very practical, not in yoga, but in daily life. Fatigue, tiredness, leads to oxidation. It wears us out. You can see that people who are too busy, working too hard, too many hours, they look older than they are. That is the result of oxidation. People who have sufficient amounts of rest, which resting is basically the rubbing on the body of the perspiration, allowing you to rest and to allow Shakti domination to fade away so that you can recover, you look healthier, you look younger, you look better. If you allow yourself sufficient rest. That is what this sutra is basically telling us. And as a result, the body derives firmness and lightness, health, basically. Sutra 14. In the early stages of practice, food mixed with milk and ghee is prescribed as the best diet. But when practice has advanced, such restrictions need not be observed. You have to look at this from the perspective of the time that this book was written. People's diet generally was very austere. Milk and ghee were a luxury. But they were the power foods of the time. They didn't have Red Bull or coffee or protein powders or all these kinds of things that we these days use to strengthen ourselves. Milk and clarified butter were the power foods of the time. If you have lived according to a certain pattern for years and then suddenly you take up a new discipline like yoga, but it can be anything. You start exercising or you start working, or any big change in life demands lots of nutrients, lots of calories from our system. And in the beginning things are shaken up, so you need to compensate for that by eating more or eating more nutrient-dense foods like milk and ghee. But he clearly says, once the dust settles down, once you get used to it, you don't need that anymore. You can just go back to your old austere diet pattern. 15. As the lion, elephant, or tiger is tamed gradually, even so should energy be brought under control. Else it will kill the practitioner. So, a couple of things. The lion, elephant, and tiger are wild beasts. If we tame them, we can bring them under control. These are wild beasts that are big balls of energy. We're talking about energy control here. A human being is in an unconditioned state like a wild animal. And I mentioned it before, we live of course in a time where practically everybody is subjected to 1.5 to 2 decades of compulsory education. That is what is already kind of taming the wild beast. It is what civilizes humanity. That is why that is why education is compulsory, dictated by the government. They want people to behave so that order can be kept in society, so society is very productive for everybody. Gradually is here in play again. It means that we know the structure of the counting. If you're a little bit motivated, if you are a little bit enthusiastic, you might think, well, let's increase the count, it will work better. And of course, we need to increase the count over time, and we will. But if you increase too fast, it can actually cause discomfort. The author says it can kill the practitioner. I've not seen any examples of people having severe repercussions from energy control, but as described in one of the sutras that follows, it can lead to severe discomfort. So the word gradually, just enjoy your practice on a regular basis and gradually increase the count. 16, through the proper practice of pranayama, along with the right food and proper bandhas, there's freedom from all diseases. By a mistaken course of yoga, the practitioner brings all diseases upon himself. Diseases are caused by blockages in our energy circulation. They start with little discomforts that we often do not recognize. And the longer these symptoms are being ignored, the more severe the symptoms will become. The latest stage of this process is, of course, death. Now, even with modern yoga, where yoga is not really yoga anymore, many people start practicing yoga because they understand that it makes us healthier, that it can heal existing diseases gradually, and that in the long term it will prevent diseases from occurring. We think that that is a physical thing, but it starts with energy. If the energy circulation is good, the physical body is good. The whole philosophy of Eastern medicine is based on that. So when somebody is sick, you treat the energy and not the symptom. Well, if the symptoms need some treatment because it is painful or in some form bothersome, then of course you can treat that too on the side, but the main treatment really is to where the blockage is. That is where acupuncture comes in, and massages and all the herbal extractions that we know from traditional medicine. Sutra 17, a wrong course of pranayama produces hiccup, asthma, bronchial diseases, pains in the head, ears and eyes, and various other diseases. This sutra tells us, not directly, but if you try to do this as a breath control, these are all the symptoms that you are going to suffer from. Headache, pain in the eyes, difficulty breathing, and what have you. Simply because it's impossible, practically impossible. If you follow the instructions and you try to put that in a pattern of breath control, with inflow retention, outflow retention, it's just not possible. And if you force yourself to try anyway, you end up with these kind of symptoms.
But one question.
Yes.
So you mean generally it's not possible, or with the count that he is saying it's not possible?
Look, breathing is healthy. And I have done breathing exercises. It increases levels of oxygen in your blood. Breathing deep and calm does calm the nerve system, but it doesn't do what the book describes that the exercises do for you. Each pranayama has a very particular purpose. And Nadi Sodhana pranayama is to cleanse the energy channels. But after we have repeated this 13 times, we will move on to other pranayamas, and then I will point out what those pranayamas are designed for, because each of them is for very specific health problems that we can encounter. And there you see that if you do it as a breath control exercise, not only is it not possible according to that pattern of inflow holding and outflow holding the breath, not practically possible, but also it doesn't do anything about those diseases that the book is promising that it will treat. And also, I want to share with you that when I started practicing yoga, I started on my own with a book. The book was titled Teach Yourself Yoga in the Reader's Digest series. And the book suggested breathing exercises, and those breathing exercises felt good. But I came across Nadi, Sodhana, Pranayama, and you know Ida, Pingala, the left channel, the right channel. So what do they say? Breathe in through your left nostril and exhale through your right nostril. And not knowing any of this yet at that time, I did have the skepticism to think, what difference does it make through which nostril you inhale and exhale? So I rebelliously did not do the what do you call it, switching between the left and the right nostril. I just inhaled and exhaled through both nostrils. And another thing that the book did not tell you to do was to follow that counting pattern. And allegedly, when you do the breathing, it's supposed to clean your energy channels. There is no connection there.
But for some people it is.
Listen, again, breathing exercises are good. They're healthy.
I mean, maybe it's an entry point for those who do not want to go into that energy pathway.
I totally understand. True.
Because energy is overwhelming, I mean,
yes,
for some people. So
I know.
maybe.
But that is why this is a structured course. This is a course for people who are really interested in yoga. And when this course is finished and you want to do breathing exercises, for God's sake, please do. There is nothing wrong with breathing exercises, but pranayama is about energy. This is how it works, and use it to your advantage or put it aside. No problem. You can do both. I have sensitive lungs because I smoked since I was young. I quit smoking 20 years ago, but then you live in a city with a pretty heavy air pollution, and I've been exercising a lot throughout the years. Before the smartphones, I wasn't really aware. Unless the sky was almost brown or beige from the pollution, from the yellow sand. Most of the days I would just go out and make long walks up the hill and down the hill, and because I don't like jogging anymore, but I like moving. Apart from yoga, I need to also move, and that probably made my lungs also. My lungs are not very bad, but it did affect my lungs. So breathing exercises help. So I do breathing exercises sometimes. But pranayama is pranayama. They're two different things. And like I said last week also, if you're healthy, you are blessed. But that blessing can be a curse because it might be more difficult to actually feel the effect of the pranayama exercise. And I gave you an example of the two students we had with chronic diseases that neither Oriental medicine nor Western medicine has a solution for those diseases other than oppressing the symptoms. And pranayama really helped them. Because they have the curse of their disease, it is a blessing in disguise Because doing pranayama and feeling how it really helped them, it really worked, motivated them to continue practicing. But I know from all the hundreds of students that I've had throughout the years, most of them don't do pranayama anymore after the course is finished. And that's fine, that's okay. Maybe one day when they need it, they will grab back to it. Yeah. Here you have the sutra with 3 times gradually in one sentence. One should gradually efflux the energy and thus gradually draw it in. One should also restrain it gradually, and thus siddhi is obtained. Just highlight the word gradually. Siddhi, how do you explain siddhi? Siddhi is supernatural or paranormal abilities. Why do we call them supernatural and paranormal? Because for most people they appear to be rare or non-existent. I say they are very normal. They're not supernatural and paranormal. They are very natural and very normal, provided that there is energy available. But it's called siddhi. Siddhis is basically a description of your increased sensitivity and consciousness that leads to deep insight, that leads to a well-functioning intuition, being able to detect subtle vibrations that people emanate, that people radiate. What you call it? When I feel what you think, I forgot the word.
Empathizing?
Yeah, say again.
Empathizing?
No, yeah, empathizing. Of course, empathy is a higher form of connecting with a person's feelings and condition, and the word transcendence comes to mind, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Telepathy, thank you. Getting old. Telepathy. Telepathy, everybody experiences telepathy once in a while. But when the energy is there, when the condition is better, it will just occur more frequently. Normal people will occasionally and accidentally experience it just because of a fleeting moment of the energy being in the right place at the right time. But conditioned people, having that energy in the right place most of the time, will experience that more and more often. That is siddhi. A person who has siddhis is a siddha. We will come across, the word is being used frequently in the text. You will see. But a siddhi, supernatural, paranormal, I consider them natural and normal.
And could it be for a person that you get to have these sort of situations with just one other person, for example? It's like not a broad gift, sort of to say, or broad like ability, but you just have this kind of, I don't know if it is a sixth sense or telepathy or I don't know. But could it be that you just have it with one person?
Yeah,
it's a broad ability.
No, it often manifests with a person that you are connected with in a way. With your partner. Your partner may be at work and thinking, hey, let's have Chinese food tonight. And you grab the phone and you say, hey, let's have Chinese food. Oh, that was what I was thinking. What a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. I have dreams that predict people's misfortune. Unfortunately, it's always something like an accident. And I recognize the dream because it's very vivid. And when I wake up with a great sense of restlessness. And the very first time that happened, it was very disturbing. But I didn't understand it at that time, so I didn't know what to do with it. But now, when it happens, I just contact the person or somebody around those people, and I'm not directly addressing the issue, but just, throw out a line. The last time that it happened was with my Hapkido teacher, who is in just outside of Seoul. And so I called him and I said, everything okay? And he said, yeah, everything is okay. And then I told him, I dreamt about you twice. And then he said, no, everything is okay. But then I contacted his daughter, and she told that he actually, while sleigh riding with his grandchild on the mountain behind their house, he slipped and fell and had what do you call it, a seizure? He had a seizure. So he had to be carted off to the hospital, MRI scan of his brain. But he didn't want to talk about it. He just denied anything was wrong. But his daughter then explained that actually something did happen. Somebody you're connected with in one way or another. I have it with people in the Netherlands also. An old neighbor. It was very interesting because it was misinterpreted first. I dreamt twice about this person, very disturbing, so I contacted my sister because I don't know the contact information of that old neighbor. And so my sister contacted my old neighbor and she said, oh, strange, how did your brother know that? My husband almost died from corona. He barely made it. So thinking that was the issue, me included, of course, because these dreams are not concrete. You don't know what. It's just a restless, disturbing feeling. You don't know what is happening or what has happened. It's usually I have the dream before something happens. But then I was contacted again. And she had fallen off her bike with a heart stoppage, and that happened after I had the dream. Well, her husband almost dying from corona happened before. Happened before I had the dream, but the dream wasn't about her husband. It was about her. Something about to happen. Usually I have the dream before something happens. So somebody you're connected with? Yes?
Sorry, I have a personal question. Is it possible to have a lot of that happen, but not stay for a long time, or not often be sattvic? In being sattva energy, like harmonious energy? Is it possible to access these abilities? Because I share all of these experiences, but I want to understand if it's possible.
To do it consciously?
No, to be somebody who is sattvic a lot. Is that not the word? When Shakti and Shiva are harmonious?
Yeah.
That's what you need to be able to have energy rise up to the crown chakra. And
Yeah.
that's what helps somebody be a Siddha or something, right?
Yeah.
So then I was thinking, is it possible to have all of these Siddha qualities but not really identify as being sattvic, like having harmonious energy often? Yeah.
No, wait, one does not go without the other. But so the manifestation of siddhis occurs when there is relative sattva. That even if you've never practiced yoga, you can be relatively sattvic. There are natural sattvic people. And
But you respond to the visions, right? To the energy.
Everything. I've always been very intuitive in every experience. I also have often those dreams before something.
I noticed that you recognized it.
I now have the ability to actually understand them even better and actually know it depends. But I was just curious because I don't consider myself very stable or harmonious, even though people always tell me that that they identify me as the qualities, that of somebody who understands and is intuitive. And so I felt maybe I'm an empath and I have to work on, using that energy well. And so because they don't go without one another, I was trying to understand how that works.
If you're an empath, you're a person who is relatively sattvic. Okay. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that refined sensitivity that makes you an empath. Okay. I've been like that since I was born. That's why I've always been different. It's also a source of suffering because I didn't understand it until I learned about it through yoga.
I thought it was not a positive thing unless I took control of it, but it still manifests, so it's irrelevant whether it's a positive thing or not. You just are born empath or different. That's what I was.
Yeah. So it requires large amounts of energy, which some people have naturally. And when you have large, it's like shooting at something. And sometimes you if you're not conditioned, but you do have large amounts of energy, sometimes you touch the goal. Sometimes you hit the goal. So these cities do manifest spontaneously. And it's very subtle. You won't even realize that you possess supernatural abilities until many, many years later that you realize, oh yeah, really, oh God. Because it's very subtle, basically. But being an empath in itself is a siddhi. Empathy. When the nadis are purified, Sutra 19, there are external signs. Leanness and brightness of the body are definitely produced. Clear amount of energy or energy levels increase and you become more sattvic, and that also manifests on physical level. You become healthier and you will look better also. If you're blessed by not having any diseases or chronic diseases, I think I mentioned last week that do give it the benefit of the doubt and try to practice pranayama at least for a couple of weeks on a very regular basis, like 5-6 times a week, and then judge what it is doing with you or not. But I'm convinced that you will, even though you are very healthy already, that you will definitely feel a considerable difference between before you started practicing pranayama and having practiced pranayama on a very regular basis for a couple of weeks. You're definitely going to notice, even without having diseases that need healing. Try it out. Give it the benefit of the doubt. The last one for this session, Sutra 20. When one is able to restrain the energy as desired, when the gastric fire becomes more active and the nada is heard, there is perfect health, because the nadis are purified. Nada is mentioned here. If you go to other yoga classes, I recommend that you do talk with the teachers about nada, and most of them will never have heard of it. It's here, the most basic yoga book that any yoga teacher that takes themselves serious is supposed to have studied. If they have heard of it, it's more like a theory. Yeah, I read about nada, it was mentioned in the text that I read. But they have not translated that into that ringing sound in the ears that they subconsciously, everybody hears. Because nada is in everybody, it's the vibration of your energy circulation. And the healthier you are, the clearer nada becomes. Some people go to the doctor complaining about the ringing in their ears. And the doctor will then say you are suffering from tinnitus. Tinnitus is of course a clinical condition, but most people who think that they are suffering from tinnitus, actually they're just healthy, they're blessed with their good health and they hear nada all day. I hear nada all day, I hear it now while I'm talking to you. So nada is a sign of good health and not a reason to think that you're having a medical problem. Unless, there are some exceptions of course, where there is a clinical reason, but then it's not like nada anymore, then it is a really disturbing sound. I remember from in the past a deaf person told me about the disturbing ringing in their ears. But a deaf person is deaf, they don't hear. It's a vibration. And so I explained that it was nada, and that it is something that is related to the energy circulation, and that it indicates good health. And that really made her comfortable. Because until I explained it, she thought that there was something wrong with her. That she was suffering from some condition. Maybe related to being deaf, deaf-mute. She was deaf-mute. And it just changed everything, basically. Being able to give it a positive place in how you experience it.
The occasional ringing that can last a few seconds, different pitches, that's also considered nada? Can we also consider it nada?
An occasional pitch?
The occasional different in pitch, but the occasional ringing, sometimes it feels like really inside. There are different ones, but the occasional ringing, not just the buzzing sounds, like a different. Never had it when you're actually like a tinnitus.
You mean louder or more disturbing, or?
Just like, for example, you're talking or you're doing anything and then it goes to for a few seconds. So to me it sounds different than when I'm doing meditation or hear nada, for example. Is it not also considered?
Look, nada is there all the time.
Yeah.
And it may appear to you as a short moment of nada being there, but that is because your consciousness for a moment is so calm that nada stands out. The reason why most people don't hear nada is because we are constantly busy with external things in our lives, based on our gross senses, hearing, seeing, smelling, taste, and touch. Every class that I start, for some reason the past 3 classes have been very small, but I normally have classes with between 15 and 25 people. And the first time that I talk about nada, only few people recognize it immediately. And it takes after I have explained it, the next week when people come back to class, about half of the class then has recognized it during the weekdays, just in daily life situations. And then a week or 2 weeks later, practically everybody hears nada. But in the beginning, the first time that I explain about nada, people don't recognize it. They've never heard it, at least not consciously. I remember how that went when I was taught about nada. Because first also I didn't recognize it, and then I realized I've been listening to it all my life. I listen to it when I'm in the park enjoying the sun, or in the swimming pool as a child, going to the swimming pool in the summer, or as a child. I'm from a big family, so my mom was like a sergeant. Everything was strict. routine. So we had to go to bed after dinner. 6 o'clock, 6:30. And with every year that you got older, you were allowed to go to bed 15 minutes later. So you lie there in bed and full of energy and your eyes wide open and you're staring at the ceiling. Nada. You don't realize it, but looking back, nada. There's always listening to nada. Sitting in front of the window, in the windowsill. I always sat in front of the window just looking out in the street. They're buzzing out, listening to nada. Well, I didn't know that until I learned about nada, and I think it goes like that with most people. So it takes a little time before people realize it. The gastric fire is mentioned here. The gastric fire becoming more active, that is the 3 chakras in the belly that together form a vital source of energy. But notice nada is mentioned here, and it's not the only. It will be mentioned a couple of times in chapter 1 and chapter 2. Questions? Okay, let's have a short break then.
Thank you.